Hello, SpongicX here with my thoughts on the first 8 episodes of the new animated series on Netflix, Sonic Prime. Ever since the success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, so many franchises are trying to copy off its success with themes of multiverses. From the current Marvel movies to even video games like Disney Mirrorverse, Crash Bandicoot 4, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake, and Bayonetta 3. I feel like a lot of these multiverse stories are getting rather tiring and not as exciting as their concepts could be. So when I saw the next Sonic series would take place with Sonic being trapped in many different dimensions with alternate versions of his friends and enemies instead of just staying place in Sonic's main world, I was a bit unsure. Despite my concerns, I can safely say Sonic Prime is the best animated adaptation of Sonic. I never really liked the first three Western Sonic cartoons, the OVA, and I did like Sonic X as a kid, but I kind of outgrew that show as I got older. I loved Sonic Boom when it first came out, but it wasn't quite what I was hoping it would be in the end. Um, eh, like, uh, like I was actually one of the few who thought Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was okay, if anything. I didn't think it was great, but I kind of liked how the video game implied that the show was gonna have like a range of silly moments, but still have some dark and serious moments, and that was absent in the show. The show just relied too much on meta humor, cynical writing, and mean spirited moments. I kind of wished it was more like Rise of Lyric, honestly, but that and it just didn't make a lot of sense. It really fell apart on itself, especially when you followed like the original interviews and stuff like that of what Sonic Boom was supposed to be. And like they made it sound like how Styx the Badger would have like a crucial introduction, only for her to not have an introduction, not only in the game but even in the show. They said like how Rise of Lyric was supposed to be a prequel to the show, and no, it really wasn't. It's like it really didn't follow the. It's like the show didn't follow the game didn't follow the show very well. So it was a whole mess. Sonic Boom was just a guilty pleasure mess of a show and a marketing failure with its failed video game tie-in and lack of merchandise sales. If it weren't for Sonic Boom, I'll bet Sonic Prime would have been more heavily marketed. Yet there's currently no video game tie-ins or merch to be announced, or none of it in sight. So Sonic Prime does an amazing job at telling a new story while reminding fans that they are still watching a show based on the video games. Going from like the world layout to resembling the screwy landscapes and levels of Sonic games to the elements like Sonic losing rings when he gets hit. Even some of the classic sound effects can be heard. Like there's a part where Sonic ran to like some thorns and you actually heard like the old spike sound effect from the Genesis games. Little touches like that. There's even some little sprite animated segments during like flashbacks where Sonic's recalling like how he met Tails or Knuckles. And so the story in this might not be anything new or amazing, but it's handled very well, especially for a Sonic adaptation, and it gives the characters a lot of personality and likability, no matter what dimension we're sent to. The roster isn't as big as shows like Sonic X, but it is better than Sonic Boom's, where the only characters from the games who really showed up constantly were Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. The only thing I'd say that show had over this is rest in peace, Styx the Badger. But the show includes the main four while throwing in characters like Rouge the Bat and Big the Cat. And I loved every single take on these characters in the show. No matter what dimension we were in, the characters were still likable, even though they were drastically different in each dimension. And I hope to see more characters down the line, characters like Silver and Blaze. Although Blaze isn't in the show, there is a Purple Cat character. No, not that one. But she eerily kind of resembles Blaze. It makes you just wonder, why didn't they just use Blaze instead? The main plot involves Sonic destroying a gem that the evil Dr. Eggman is using as a power source for his latest evil scheme. Sonic interrupts the plan by recklessly jumping in and smashing the gem, which ends up shattering his dimension and sending Sonic and the others into different dimensions. So the fate of Sonic's friends and Eggman has yet to be verified. We don't know what really happened to them aside from them just being flung into different dimensions. So hopefully the show can eventually cover that on when it continues. But the show starts off feeling incredibly rushed. It doesn't spend a whole lot of time in Green Hill Zone before everything goes downhill by going to different dimensions. But Luckily, the show does have a lot of flashbacks that go back to the events in Green Hill. So, just like the dimensions themselves, even the plot of the show is shattered. So, as Sonic keeps having flashbacks to him and his friends moments before the events of the show took place. These flashbacks help Sonic reflect on his actions, making him realize how much of a jerk he was and how none of this would have happened if he had just listened to his friends and appreciated them more. So this is nothing new to the Sonic series. We've seen plenty of plot lines that basically use this, whether it was the pilot of Sonic X, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, and Sonic Lost World. I will say that compared to those takes on it, this show does a much better job at actually giving time for Sonic to actually reflect on his actions and feel haunted by his actions and mistakes, and you really get the sense of how much Sonic really does care for his friends and how much he misses them. Like any other of these stories, they just have Sonic just out of nowhere say, "Oh, this is all my fault. I should have listened to this character," and it feels too forced and not genuine. So here, they give you the time to actually see Sonic like having flashbacks to his friends and realizing how much they mean to him, and it was a really nice change of pace for the series. It's nice to finally see Sega let the writers have less restrictions with Sonic now. Sega was strictly against letting Sonic show emotions in past games. He wasn't even allowed to shed a tear or anything. So, fans were just getting sick of it. They're tired of Sonic being an emotionless robot, or just, nothing but a cocky sass machine. They want to see him actually have weaknesses aside from just, being afraid of water. So to see a show where Sonic is still the same character as before, he has all the traits that made people love him to begin with, but now he can finally express how much his friends mean to him, and you can see how much he really cares for them, and it's a nice change of pace. The characters are all treated incredibly well, even the alternate dimension versions of them. There wasn't a single moment in the show where I was bored or annoyed with the characters, and I think it's mostly thanks to just the fun portrayal these characters have. I'll even dare say this is my favorite voice cast of the Sonic series. I always find it so jarring when Sonic games get a new voice cast, whether it was a sudden change like the one in from the Adventure era to the X era, or all the way to the jump to Sonic Colors. So here, though, this is like the first time I've seen like voice changes where the voices didn't feel off when you first hear them. I thought they fit the characters just fine, and I wouldn't even mind hearing them in future video games. It's kind of strange to notice that a bunch of these voice actors are straight from My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, but this show has like my favorite takes on the voices for characters like Amy, Rouge. I thought like their new voices were just fantastic. I felt a little mixed about Knuckles at times though. Like there are times where he sounds great, but there are times where he sounds a little too dim-witted. It varies. It's like they couldn't decide if they want Knuckles to sound dumb or more tougher. And otherwise he's fine though. But so Tails, there's something very different about Tails. He definitely sounds a little nasally, and I don't know if it's just me, but it sounds like this is a version of Tails that has Asperger's, and very fitting for his kind of character. So there's just something about Tails where he just kind of sounds a little more nasally, and I don't know. Apparently he's the same voice of Rainbow Dash from Friendship is Magic. The voice of Sonic does a great job. He nails the character. Same with Eggman. And yeah, overall, the voice cast is really good. I'd say the only one I feel kind of iffy about is Knuckles. But even Shadow, it's like he sounds like a mixture of Jason Griffith with a little bit of Kirk Thornton. But it sounds so much better than just Kirk Thornton's take on Shadow. So yeah, overall, the voice cast is amazing. I love it. I love how even the alternate dimensional versions of these characters have different names and sometimes even different voice tones to fit the setting they're in. So, like examples for Tails and Amy. So for Tails, we see like a Kitsune version of Tails named Nine. We get a pirate version of him named Sails, and a feral dog-like version named Mangy. And then we get like a Terminator version of Amy called Rusty Rose, a feral warrior version named Thorn Rose, and a pirate-themed one named Black Rose. I loved how all of them were just takes on the name Rose, some kind of different name of a rose. It was so cool. But I loved all these variations in names, and a big worry I had with this series was that the focus on different dimensions, it would leave me wishing the main cast were on screen instead of these alternate takes on the characters, but the show does a fine job making each of these alternate characters stand out on their own, without feeling like direct clones of Sonic's friends, despite their similar designs. The main threats of the series are a fun addition as well, being a council of alternate Eggman, or Eggmen, I guess. So as Sonic puts it, it's like an Eggman family reunion. There's an old man, a careless teen, a philosopher, and even a baby version of Eggman, along with their leader, Mr. Dr. Eggman. So this league of different Eggman make for some funny and menacing villains. I especially got a laugh out of the baby one, the way it had like a mech that crawled around like a baby and it fought with deadly baby toys. It was just brilliant. It is a shame that Mike Pollock wasn't brought back as Eggman, but the new voice actor for him still gets the job done. And so funny how basically the whole setting in the show is technically Green Hill Zone, but with heavy alterations where you barely recognize the place. Now, compared to Sonic Boom, that lazily just kept reusing the same environments and assets over and over, got really boring and kind of embarrassing to look at. So, whether it's a dystopian industrial Green Hill, an overgrown jungle, or a flooded Green Hill, these locations were just more refreshing. As sick as I am of seeing Green Hill Zone being used across multiple Sonic media, at least they changed it up. I felt like these alternate takes on it were refreshing and had neat parallels between the past and present during the flashback segments. Now, I won't go into full spoilers with the show, so you're better off seeing it for yourself, but the first episode is nearly an hour long, while every other episode is roughly over 20 minutes. The first 3 episodes focus on Sonic being sent to a dystopian future where he slowly starts realizing he's in a different dimension, his friends are missing, and all he's finding of his friends are alternate dimensional versions of them that he's trying so hard to get used to. The first friend he comes across is another Tails named Nine, a Kitsune-inspired Tails with 7 mechanical tails to go with his already 2 tails, giving him a spider-like or Dr. Octopus-like movement and attack. So, unlike Sonic's best friend Tails, Nine is a social outcast who never grew up with a figure like Sonic to stand up for him and embrace him for being different, which caused this version of Tails to grow very bitter to the world and even isolate himself to be a rough loner. So in a way, this whole show reminds me of a certain episode of Sonic Boom, but done many times better. There was an episode called Where Have All the Sonics Gone?, where Sonic got sent to a dimension where he doesn't exist, and we see him encourage a resistance to rise up and take down the villain Lord Eggman. While the episode wasn't bad, it felt very underwhelming, just a huge missed opportunity. It was kind of lazy, and it really didn't do a good job at giving It's a Wonderful Life effect with Sonic's absence, and didn't give a very convincing job at showing how Sonic's presence affected the lives around him. I mean, keep in mind, it was only an 11-minute episode, too, in a comedy series, so the fact that Sonic Prime isn't held back from just being a comedy, while there are funny moments sprinkled in, it does allow itself to have some dramatic and intense moments. So, yeah, I liked how we constantly see Sonic constantly trying to cheer up Nine by comparing him to all the things that his counterpart Tails was able to do, like his accomplishments in building like the best plane ever and all that. And so, ever since Sonic was sent to a dimension, there was a strange occurrence that kept happening where his feet kept surging with strange electric energy. Nine is eventually able to give Sonic some devices that he was able to strap onto his gloves and shoes. They were supposed to channel the energy, but instead it had an unexpected side effect where it not only changes colors and appearance, but it gives Sonic different abilities that match the dimensions he goes to. So, like, in this jungle world, his gloves get what feel like an X-Men Wolverine accessory that allows him to use, like, the claws to help climb up trees, where the pirate world allows his shoes to float on water. So, it's a fun way to change things up for each world that Sonic goes to. It would make a fun feature if they ever decided to turn this show into a game adaptation, or even give it action figure lineups. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how Sonic Prime not only shows how others need Sonic, but most importantly, it shows how Sonic needs his friends just as equally. Some of us are just tired of Sega treating Sonic like he's the only savior in these settings. Despite how there's a wonderful cast of characters who have such great abilities, yet they keep making them seem so useless when fans know these characters are more capable. And so it's nice to see Sega is slowly starting to peel back the layers of these characters and starting to give them the spotlight again. Whether it was their triumphant return in Sonic the Hedgehog Movie 2, or even the fact that Sonic not only did Sonic Frontiers kind of shed a little more spotlight on the characters, but we're even getting free DLC next year that lets us play as these characters again. So it's nice to see Sega finally remembering, yeah, they have other characters. Let's do something with them. Let's remind fans of why they love them in the first place. And fans are begging for these characters to return, and we're finally slowly starting to get them back. And it's nice to finally see these characters in good portrayals again. So, Sonic doesn't care that these versions of the characters aren't from his world. He still sees that they're in trouble. He still sees them as his friends deep down. He wants to help them regardless, even if they aren't on his side at the time. And speaking of which, let's get to one of the most tragic characters of this show so far, Rusty Rose. So in this dystopian dimension, while we don't get any specifics on how or why this happened, this version of Amy arguably had it the worst, where she was brutally modified into a cyborg who lost all of her humanity, and she even had her heart ripped out and it was replaced with a flicky. So now Rusty's role in the show was a bit surprising, because despite her menacing appearance, the previews made her look like an ally to Sonic and the Resistance he teams up with, but Rusty is not only a villain, but a reoccurring henchwoman to the Chaos Council. So you think she'd start out as like a villain for a little bit and quickly join Sonic's cause, becoming an ally, and no, she doesn't. There is a brief moment where Nine was able to hack her and overwrite her function to assist the Resistance, so basically all the clips you saw in the trailers where it showed her fighting alongside Team Sonic, that was just during that brief moment where Tails had her under his control. But it doesn't take long for her to get back under the Council's control, making her a villain again. So this version of Amy seems pretty tragic, and it makes me wonder if the show will dare to show an episode where she somehow gets like memories restored on like what happened to her, and maybe it'll leave for like a real heartbreaking moment, or I don't know. But Rusty makes for a pretty menacing villain, a kind of sympathetic one too. You kind of feel sorry for her, but they still manage to get away with a few comical moments as well, mainly in ways that she's defeated for the time being. Like, it's kind of funny how, like, 1 minute she can stand around looking menacing, then you hear, like, a zap noise, and she falls over because Tails zapped her. So, yeah, there are some comical moments with her. And the Resistance in this world seems to be run by Rouge and Knuckles, and something tells me this show might reignite the Knuckles and Rouge shippers. A little off topic, but I just love the little scenes where it shows, like, Rouge the Bat, and she sleeps upside down like a real-life bat, and I can't help but think, like, we're going to be seeing a lot of fan art of that from now on. One of the big questions of the show is how Shadow will play into this, because for right now he seems to be portrayed like a villainous rival, similar to his role in Sonic Boom, but not as obnoxious. But it is possible that Shadow is an anti-hero in this story. While Shadow is still destructive and stubborn, we see him many times trying to warn Sonic not to do certain things, which Sonic ignores, causing situations to get worse and causing Shadow to get angrier with Sonic. So I would not be surprised if down the line Sonic begins to learn that Shadow isn't all so bad after all. And regardless, I still think Shadow is handled slightly better here compared to every appearance he's had since Sonic Free Riders or Sonic Boom. Shadow has barely been in the show so far. Mostly he just appears in flashbacks, or there are scenes where like Sonic is able to hear his voice across the dimensions. And then, of course, there's the cliffhanger ending at the end of Episode 8, where he finally catches up with Sonic and confronts him for shattering their home. And so, yeah, it's like when the show continues, they'll probably show where their battle continues from there. I am glad that the show isn't just another Sonic Saturday AM, Sonic Forces, or IDW comics. I'm honestly sick of Sonic media constantly revolving around some kind of resistance or group of freedom fighters. I like it better when it's Sonic and pals just going on different adventures instead of being some part of Resistance or something. And so I feared that that was all the show was going to be. It was going to focus on just a dystopian future, get boring and annoying, but it wasn't like that at all. Even the dystopian scenes in this were fun, but I am glad the show mixes it up by having Sonic get sent away from that dimension and end up in different ones for like 2 episodes or something. So, like, the first 3 episodes focus on the dystopian future. Episodes 4 and 5 focus on a jungle-themed world. Episode 6 briefly returns back to this dystopian world, only to end up in a pirate-themed world for episodes 7 and 8. And I really enjoyed episodes 4 and 5. where Sonic gets tangled into a Princess Mononoke-like story where he finds himself between a war between animals and nature. So Sonic finds feral variants of Rouge, Knuckles, Big, and a dog-like version of Tails, as they're forced to live up in the trees, as they claim a monster is down below preventing them from getting food. And so, in a bizarre twist, the monster turns out to be Amy, or an alternate version of Amy named Thorn, along with a giant Flicky sidekick. Most of the episodes focus on Sonic trying to understand what the deal is with this feral version of Amy. He learned she used to be friends with the others, but turned against them when they started mistreating the environment and destroying the forest and all of its resources. So, throughout the show, Sonic travels to different worlds by touching the remains of the shattered crystal from the show's beginning. And so, Sonic is trying to find the shattered crystal of that world so he can basically go out and look for his friends again. So, Thor decides to help Sonic find the shard to send him home, only for her to take it for herself, betray Sonic, and she uses the power of the crystal to power up her hammer to allow it to grow plants of every swing of her hammer. So every time she slams her hammer into the ground, like a tree or a vine will burst out. So it made for some cool visuals and so interesting fight scenes as well. So Sonic keeps having flashbacks towards how cheerful and helpful Amy was, and all he can see when he's talking to Thorn is he sees Amy, and he's noticing how drastically different they are. And so Sonic keeps trying to think, what would Amy do in a situation like this? And so he's trying to find a way to make both her and the other villagers in the tree friends again. And so it leads to some funny exchanges and misunderstandings, only leading for things to get worse, to the point where it just enrages Thorn even more. She gets more angry than ever, and she starts just causing the forest to overgrow like crazy, to the point where she blocks out all of the sunlight, preventing any of the other plants down below to get sunlight. And there comes a point where Sonic is able to smash a giant hole through like the canopy of the trees, allowing some light to shine back in, which leads to a beautifully emotional scene where Thorn just breaks into tears, feeling ashamed for abandoning her friends and nearly killing the forest in pursuit of trying to save it, leading to both sides opening up to each other and finally making peace with each other again. So, eventually Sonic meets back up with Nine, who took the first shard and made a machine that can allow them to travel to other dimensions. Eventually, the Chaos Council finds out about the other shards and how they can basically travel through dimensions with them. And so Sonic eventually ends up in a pirate world where alternate versions of his friends are under the leadership of a captain version of Knuckles. This Captain Knuckles used to be a feared pirate until he led his crew onto a hopeless mission that led them to abandon him, causing him to become a party animal pirate who doesn't crave adventure and would rather just, play things safe and just goof around, basically. And his crew is just sick of it. They want to go back to pirating. And so, eventually the Chaos Council captured Nine, and they used his crystal to send Rusty Rose and the other robot henchmen to attack Sonic in this pirate dimension. And so I kind of like that. I had a feeling there would eventually come a point where the Eggman figure out how to travel through dimensions, and that will raise the stakes. So it makes it feel like they're invading other worlds, and Sonic has to stop them. It's funny how it took until episode 8 for that to happen, but so Sonic encourages Captain Knuckles to regain his inner pirate to lead his new crew to fight off their otherworldly invaders. And the episode ends with Sonic touching another shard, which causes him to meet up with Shadow, where every time he travels, he ends up in this shattered world as he's being warped from one dimension to another. And so while he was being warped to another dimension, he somehow runs into Shadow along the way, and the show ends for now. So visually, the show is kind of mixed, though. The animation ranges from being fluid and action-packed, and sometimes being zany, like some Sony animation films, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball or Hotel Transylvania. And the shading and lighting are overall a huge improvement over Sonic Boom, but sometimes the show jumps between looking either cinematic or looking like a PS3 in-game cutscene. So overall, I still found the show visually appealing, but some of the backgrounds could have been better. Some of them look kind of bland, but some of them do stand out. So the effects could have been better, but it's still a step up from Sonic Boom and even the modern video games. But the action scenes, on the other hand, are very well done. Not the same repetitive battles you see in nearly every episode of Sonic Boom, where you see the characters use the same attacks over and over on the same robots over and over. So, especially considering how that was a show that focused more on telling jokes and less on story or action. So, it just felt tacked on for the sake of it. Sonic Prime, the battles are more comic book-esque, flashy, fun, and energetic, and they just flow with the story a lot better. The musical score also does a decent job at fitting the action on screen, and I'm not kidding when I say I wish there was a way to watch the show in 3D. Netflix should invest in finding a way to bring 3D virtual reality to some of their shows. Imagine just watching Sonic Prime in 3D on Oculus Rift. The show would look stunning with 3D effects popping out. And overall, the show has me hooked, and I can't wait to see the rest of the season unfold. And I hope it gets renewed with more episodes and seasons to come. And the show just made me feel like a kid again, and makes me jealous that this isn't the Sonic I grew up with. Now, 2022 has been an amazing year for Sonic the Hedgehog. With his decent film sequel, even his awful first film design got redeemed in the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie. Sonic Origins was a fun look back at the original games. Sonic Frontiers, while it was flawed, it was still a fun comeback for the Sonic games, and they just topped the year off with arguably the best show adaptation of Sonic yet. For right now, I give Sonic Prime an 8 out of 10. It gave me so much to love and so much to look forward to. I want to see more from this series. It makes me wonder what kind of other worlds, characters, and stories we'll see down the line. Will we see dimensions inspired by like the Wild West, science fiction, fairy tales, comic book superheroes, medieval times, just so many possibilities. And I hope to see this show get a video game adaptation eventually that lets us relive the show in a playable form. There's a lot to work with in a game, from like dimension hopping, all the new abilities and outfits Sonic gets, all the variations of Eggman and Sonic's friends that could be used as boss fights, all of Sonic's alternate dimension friends as playable characters or NPCs. This could work as a video game and could possibly make people finally forget about the failure that was Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. After the financial failure that was Sonic Boom, maybe Sega wanted to play it safe with this new show. Maybe they wanted to see if the show would be well received before heavily promoting it further with things like games, toys, and merch. So far, it's only been getting... the only promotion it's been getting is like on online games and mobile phone apps. The first episode premiered 5 days early on the Roblox game Sonic Speed Simulator, where 9 was just recently added as a playable character to both Sonic Dash and Sonic Forces Speed Battle, with Rusty Rose added as a CPU competitor during the online races. The show will most likely appeal to those who grew up loving the Sonic Adventure games. I can't say if it will appeal to the Genesis era fans, and I can't say if the show will appeal to newcomers either. The show tries explaining the setting better than other iterations of Sonic that don't even bother trying, but I still feel like there's a lot that those who've never played a Sonic game wouldn't understand if they're going into the show blind. So I can't say if it's a good introduction to the series for newcomers. I'll even dare say maybe Sonic X was a better introduction of these characters, but so far I've seen fans just praising this show. Even IGN gave the show an 8 out of 10. They seem to hate on anything Sonic related. So, yeah, I highly recommend this show. It is good. Best thing to happen to Sonic animation-wise, in my opinion. That's all I have to show for now. So, thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.